Welcome to Tech on Deck. This is a new event that we're doing in Sun Valley, Idaho. We've been doing them for the past day and a half, partly because the Allen and Company event is here in town, and Scott kept bugging me to come to his house for the last few years and say, just hang out here and meet cool people and network. And I was like, I don't need to talk to the billionaires. But we started thinking about how we could do our own event across the street, and that's what we're doing here. One of the things I wanted to do was talk about startups because, well, there continues to be a startup revolution. I mean, I was at Web Summit last year in Dublin, and you just see row after row after row of thousands of startups, companies like the ones we're going to see on the next 45 minutes. Just spring up and try to get something going. So I'm real honored to have people from around the world. So this is startups around the world. I think we have somebody from Greece and a couple people from Israel. So let's start out with Ayelet. Ayelet, could you introduce yourself? Because we've known each other for a long time. And every time I come to Israel, you show me around and have me meet all the greatest startups. So I wanted to have you on the show because you've treated me so well in Israel in the past. But tell us what you're doing now and what your role is in Tel Aviv, Israel.
All right, so my name is Ayelet Noff. I'm the founder and co-CEO of Blonde 2.0, which is an award-winning PR firm based out of Tel Aviv, although we just opened an office in Boston as well. And we work with companies all over the world, a lot of Israeli companies, talking about internationalization. We work with companies in Africa, in the UK, in the United States, so really all over the world.
And you know the two people that we're talking to here, right?
I do. We are with two wonderful people today. We're here with Bob Rosenschein, who is the founder of Answers.com. Which was acquired for quite a substantial amount of money a few years ago. And right now he's doing a new venture, which he will tell us a little bit about, called Curiyo. Yeah. And Conno, who's joining us all the way from Greece, letting us know that everything is okay in Greece right now.
Well, right? He has the better internet connection, so something's going okay.
Yeah, I told you so, yeah.
And he's the founder of AvoCarrot, which he'll also tell about, which is doing amazing stuff in mobile advertising.
Yeah, one of the themes that's already evolved in just the first day and a half has been, we talked with musicians last night about how hard it is to get noticed and get an audience. And I've talked to Jeremiah this morning about the same thing. And I talked to Gary Shapiro, who runs the Consumer Electronics Show, about the same thing. We're all struggling to make businesses happen, get new ideas to the markets, convince people that our idea is worthy, right? And Bob, let's start out with you. You've done it before. What's changed? What's changed about startups in this new world? Because when I started blogging, there would be like one new startup a week, and now there's Y Combinator alone kicked out 110 startups in a single day. And it's just a very much noisier world today.
Well, that's the flip side of how easy it is to start up. Because 15, 20 years ago, if you wanted to start up, you'd have to buy capital equipment and servers. Now you can go, day one on Amazon Web Services or Rackspace.
Yay, thank you.
And basically, it's very, very easy to start a scalable business. So you have to have an idea. You have to have some talent. The tools are amazing. The web frameworks, the mobile frameworks, is much easier. But the flip side of that is sheer saturation. A long time ago, if a TV show had a 25% market share, runaway hit, everybody's talking about it. Now you have enormous saturation, thousands of channels. How do you get above the noise? It's harder. But that is the very flip side of all these creative ideas coming to market. It's part of the challenge, but still the best stuff does come out and hopefully reach the market.
Tell me about your new business and how that relates to Answers.com. What did you do after you sold your company?
Well, after Answers.com was sold, I took a brief vacation, just decompressed, frankly. But I had an idea that I wanted to pursue. By the way, with the total blessing of my friends at Answers.com, I started a company with my son, and we are just having fun. It's called Curiyo, Curiyo, and the whole idea is to try to solve some of the saturation, some of the. I mean, it's all about the attention. Today we are attention challenged, and it's. I am convinced that 10, 20 years the scientists will be studying what it did to our brains. But basically, we are in constant overload mode. I'm thinking the next device after Google Glass will be something with earbuds that can teach us in our sleep and, deal with that kind of Internet of Things. So we're going to be wired up with electrodes inside and outside of our head. But the problem is sheer overload. So what Curiyo was built to try to address is this idea of keeping up in touch with your favorite subject. People, places, things, team sports. And so it's all about defeating overload by bringing you the best content in one very, very simple interface. Okay, a company like Flipboard does a great job of gathering my social feeds. And we're in that same idea to supplement and enhance that ability to be in touch with your favorite stuff.
Well, yesterday morning we talked with Moshe and we talked with Samir, who runs Mode, a big media company. And you could tell the undercurrent there is Facebook is just taking over. And people are using Facebook all day long, and getting them out of Facebook is becoming increasingly difficult for both media businesses as well as for people like you who are trying to come up with a new idea for looking at content, right?
Embrace it, own it. The operative emotion is joy.
Business is not always joyful. Ask the 8,000 Microsoft workers who got laid off this morning. It's sometimes brutal. And Ayelet, I wanted to get back to you because for people who don't know, Tel Aviv and the Israeli startup system, which is this small little country, how many people are in Israel? I think 8 million people?
Just about.
That's about as many people as are in the San Francisco Bay Area. And yet you see so many interesting technologies and companies come out of Israel. In other words, it's hitting way above its weight limit, if you were using a fighting term. What's going on in the street in Israel, and why is Israel continuing to outrun all sorts of other startup ecosystems, whether they be in London or Berlin or Sydney, Australia, or even in the United States? I mean, I see more interesting companies out of Israel than Los Angeles or New York, right? Tell me what's going on there, because you meet with everybody there in that ecosystem.
Yeah, well, I think, obviously it has to do also with, the fact that we have a very strong army and we've always had to be very technologically advanced. And I think in recent years, we've become more, we see a lot more B2C companies, whereas before it was much more B2B oriented. We have more startups per capita than anywhere else in the world. And I think it's quite contagious as well. You see companies succeeding, you see your friend succeeding in his own startup and his own dream. You leave your job and you go and try to also get your dream. So I think that people are, being in a startup is something which is, on the one hand, it's very time consuming, it's very risky, but on the other hand, it adds a lot of passion and a lot of, I can see entrepreneurs, like serial entrepreneurs, doing it over and over and over again. If you look at Bob, for example, I mean, Bob could have been on a Caribbean beach somewhere now drinking a margarita, and yet he's not doing that. He's actually starting a new company now. And I see that over and over again. I think, it's like, once you get the bug, you just can't get rid of it. Yeah. And I think that because technology is so, ingrained in our society, and we talk about it so much, and it's such, a part of our life, that it's just contagious.
Yeah. We, some of the great companies out of Israel, like Waze, went to Google. Prime Sense, which makes the 3D sensor, which I really like, went to Apple. and on and on. You know, you brought me to a company called Stardot,
Yeah.
a store which makes a battery that charges in 30 seconds. What are you
Right.
seeing as the bleeding edge 2015 Israeli startup right now? What's got everybody in Tel Aviv talking about right now?
Well, actually, Stordot is one of them, and actually, they more recently created a battery that can actually charge your vehicle, your electric vehicle, in 5 minutes. So I think that Stordot is definitely one of those, top companies that I can see, succeeding internationally. I see a lot of companies that are, as I said, more B2C oriented. So lots of like different social applications, health applications. AI is very big here, just like in any other place. A lot of machine learning startups,
Yeah.
whether it's language processing or basically helping. We have a company now that we're working with that's doing visual search, just like you were speaking to Moshe yesterday. So I see a lot of AI because, again, it goes back to what you were talking about. It goes back to the fact that there's so much noise out there. We don't really want to filter it ourselves. We want the machines to do it for us. And
well, and that is a good place to get our third guest involved, because the reason our noise level is going up is we all have mobile phones now, and we're taking pictures at dinner, and we're taking pictures at rock and roll concerts, whether it be the Grateful Dead or whatnot, and we're adding a lot of data into the system that never existed in human behaviors before. And so I wanted to bring in introduce our third guest.
So hey guys, I'm Conno, co-founder at Avocado. Again, thanks Robert for including me in this conversation. It's very interesting so far, and I'm looking forward to discuss more about the challenges and the new trends of mobile advertising for 2015. So actually, I just arrived from our San Francisco offices a few hours back to our Athens offices. So I'm still trying to cope with jet lag, but I have coffee here to help me. So. I'm on.
Well,
yeah.
If you were here in Sun Valley at the Allen and Company, and you were sitting with Mark Zuckerberg, and you were sitting with Jeff Bezos, and all these billionaires around you, I bet you would be talking about how do we make more money in mobile, because all of these cool apps are coming along, but I don't see a lot of advertising in them, and the advertising I do see isn't very good. And Facebook has sort of figured it out, because they don't put a banner ad anymore. They put an ad in the stream, so as you're scrolling through, you see an ad, and it looks like part of the content. They call that native advertising, right?
Exactly.
What's your idea for improving mobile advertising for the world that needs to be paid for developing all these innovations?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. So, I mean, in general, we see that mobile advertising is still a broken industry. I mean, they kind of figured out the web, but the problem is that they're taking like the web paradigm and they put it on mobile, but it clearly doesn't work. I mean, mobile is, it's our most personal device. Everybody's doing pretty much everything with their mobile phone nowadays. There's even a survey that says more than 90% of people actually sleep with their mobile phone within reach. So it's kind of crazy. It's like our extension of ourselves. So the least we can do in the mobile advertising space as a whole is to respect the user and find ways to engage with the user in a more meaningful, more interactive way. And I think, as you said, the Facebook has done a great job making money and at the same time creating channels for advertisers to engage with users in a more healthy way. But there's still a lot of room of innovation in certain aspects, and I can actually talk about three main challenges and areas of innovation. Yeah. So the first one will be basically innovation on process of buying and selling. So the status quo of buying and selling media on mobile used to be the standard insertion order type of process, IOs, where the advertisers used to, buy blocks of traffic all at once. Whereas now we're moving towards a more programmatic buying approach, and if I can be more specific, a real-time bidding approach, so the so-called RTB. So why RTB is so effective is because we get rid of all of the operational cost, like huge resources on buying and selling, and now you have companies introducing new technologies called ad exchanges, which is basically like a stock exchange for ads, where the real-time buying and bidding occurs. And then you have, on one side, DSPs, the demand-side platforms, which are basically tools for advertisers to be able to bid on ad exchanges and buy traffic programmatically on real time. And then on the other side, you have the equivalent tools called SSPs, supply-side platforms, which essentially are the tools for the publishers now, the app developers, the apps, to essentially make as much money as they can get for yield optimization by selling their traffic programmatically. And we see all these protocols now getting introduced from people in the space, like International Advertising Bureau OpenRTB, which is the main protocol for real-time bidding now. And this is the most basically efficient way now for processing, buying, and selling per ad impression rather than per a whole block. And it makes everything much more cost efficient.
Does this let advertising get more contextual? Because some of the complaints about advertising is, one, it's showing me an ad that I just don't care about, which is wastage, right? If it's inefficiencies in the advertising model, because if I'm showing you an ad for 3D cameras and you don't care about 3D cameras, I'm wasting my my span, right? But some of it is also, once you buy a 3D camera, you still see ads for things because you've demonstrated your interest in this world by searching for something or visiting a web page, and all of a sudden you're getting retargeted as you move around. And that's wastage as well. And then we're not always in a buying mood. We're walking around with these highly personal devices, and sometimes we're looking to go to sushi, sometimes we're looking to buy some jeans, sometimes we're looking to play. We're not always in a context where an ad is appropriate, right?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, Robert. So as you also mentioned, and this actually is the second challenge, is the second pillar of innovation in mobile ad tech that I want to discuss today. So in your recent book, Age of Context, you're actually saying that basically the ultimate goal is when users are actually getting just the ads that they want to see. This is feasible, but it's not quite the case yet. There's still a lot of improvement. And when we're saying about context and data and targeting and hyper-targeting, which is all the same, at least to me, people think of it as a chaotic basically cluster of data. So the way we structure it, at least here at Avocado, is in three different categories. So the first category of context is context that you can harness from demographic data. So age groups, gender, status, all this kind of demographic data that you can actually target the ads based on that. Then you have the in-app activity context, which is basically the case where, let's say, a user plays a game and wins a level or loses a level. So this is a totally different sentimental state when it comes to the user, and this shouldn't be treated the same. And then the third pillar of context is basically, we call it the real life context or environmental context. It's everything that has to do with the location data, environmental data, weather, time of the day, but most importantly, as you mentioned earlier, the state of the user. So am I checking my phone casually between meetings during work, or am I just sitting comfortably in my sofa playing games to kill time? So this state of the user is totally different, the same user though. So the purchase intent is different. Driving meaningful traffic is different from the brand's perspective. So by getting all this data along with historical data from past experiences and past behavior of the users, both on a personal but also on a syllogical cohorted basis, and also getting data from device, you can create three-dimensional, sometimes multi-dimensional variables that you can put them in smart algorithms to target the right ad, the right user within the right context.
Wow. So this world is really getting crazy. I interviewed another startup up in Seattle that's doing a very advanced retargeting. And it's interesting to see the startups really trying to come up with a new way of doing business. I think it's also interesting to compare you to Bob, because your entrepreneurial path is quite different from his. You went through Black Box VC, right? Which was a little house in Silicon Valley where Fadi brought all sorts of entrepreneurs from around the world and put you in Silicon Valley. You were there for what, 3 months? Or,
actually it was like a 3-week immersion program sponsored by Google. It's where we met actually like 2 years ago for the first time. And it ended up actually, it was my first time in the US. It was a great experience. And after that, we were exposed to all these super people when it comes to high growth companies, meeting all these super interesting people. It actually was transformational both on a personal level but also on a company level, because now we moved there, we have offices in San Francisco, and then the satellite office here in Greece, so it's definitely transformational.
That's certainly a trend I'm seeing among most of the startups, that they have a hybrid approach, that they might be headquartered in Tel Aviv. Is that Jedi that I hear?
Yes, that's Jedi. Yeah.
And Ayelet, you're sort of like that. You have an office in Boston now because there's so many startups in Boston, and I bet you're looking at how to get into the San Francisco market as well. But like you helped launch Yo launched in Tel Aviv and then moved the headquarters to San Francisco, so it has a joint Tel Aviv and San Francisco location. And your Avocarrot is in Greece and in San Francisco, right?
And in London.
Yeah, exactly.
And in London.
And
Bob,
yeah.
And Bob, where are you headquartered? And are you thinking of this hybrid approach, or are you going to just stay in Jerusalem?
Well, we're based in Jerusalem, and we're evaluating where and when we would open up a U.S. presence. And it's really, there's a number of options. San Francisco, of course, is one. East Coast, New York is another very tempting one. But it's a great time for these kinds of things because you can be globally. Look, we have conversations going on here over a video conference.
Yeah. Well,
actually, Bob is an American in Israel, which is, but I think, and I was talking about this. I was just in Barcelona last week, and we were talking about the fact that, still, I feel like, startups in the U.S. have an advantage over startups like elsewhere, and startups in Europe, for example.
We have a much bigger market to hit. We have 380 million people here in the United States, where you only have 7 or 8 million people in Israel, right?
Yeah, no, but I'm not just talking about that. I'm talking, from other standpoints as well, like investment and so on and so forth. And I think that, I wish that the world, and I think we're going there. I think that we're moving there. But I think that, it's Europe is really like the technology that's coming out of Europe and out of Israel, it's underestimated. And I think that we're moving in the right direction, but it's taking some time.
Exactly.
But a lot of these companies in Israel, for example, and in Greece, they know that if they want to make it, they need to open an office also in San Francisco or New York or, elsewhere in the States.
And Bob, is that just for capital, or is that for talent? Is that for PR reasons? Why would a company need to locate in San Francisco or New York as well as somewhere else in the world?
Proximity, because there's still a major advantage to speaking face-to-face or stopping by, or the personal connection. And I found this again and again with Answers.com. I was just on a plane all the time, as you also travel a lot. But I wanted to add one thing to your conversation before with Ayelet about why there's so much activity in Israel. And I would add one funny little feature. Israel, it's not the local market, it's not very large, but one of the things that the Israeli culture offers that's usually good is Israelis love to question things and love to argue. Now, maybe that's a particularly incorrect thing to say, but that ability to argue and question things is actually a benefit in the startup world. It's not good in capital-intensive manufacturing, but it's great for startups. And I would add that one of the reasons San Francisco is so amazing, New York also, is the access to talent, the international immigrants, first generation, second generation, people from all over the world coming, not being judged by their background, not being judged by anything other than their talent and hard work. It's an amazing phenomenon. You're going to see it more and more throughout Europe, Far East, China. It's an amazing thing that this kind of talent, the barrier to entry to startups is getting lower. That, as you said, Robert, there's going to be more and more noise. It's going to be harder to get on the map, but you're going to see lots and lots of good ideas all over the world. I'm seeing VCs who used to only invest in Silicon Valley starting to invest in Austin, other parts of the U.S., and overseas, also Europe, Israel, places like that. It's a very active market.
Yeah, I talked to Dan from Mavron, the guy who invested in Starbucks, and he said it's no longer possible to be a VC and only invest in people you can drive to. You have to invest around the world because so many of the interesting companies are springing up from non-traditional places in the world, not just Tel Aviv. I mean, I'm seeing startups in St. Louis, and Kentucky, and all sorts of places I never thought I would see startups come out of, right?
I remember asking John, years ago, I bumped into John Doerr at one of the conferences, and I said, do you ever invest in Israel? And he just gave me a very simple one-line answer. He said, can I get there on my bicycle?
Well, John Doerr has the lifestyle that backs that up. He invested in Google, and I'm not going to worry about his returns next year. He doesn't need good returns next year to stay employed. What else should we be aware of? We're in a funding bubble in a way. Dan Levithan from Mavron said we're a victim of the cycle. And right now we're on an up cycle. We just heard about a company in China got $2 billion of funding this morning. There is a huge funding door open for certain kinds of companies. Is that what you're seeing? And are you preparing your startups for maybe the day that funding door closes? Because whenever you see a cycle, you know that the reverse is also possible, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of money now in the market, and yesterday I read a great article by Mike Isaac in the New York Times about how many angel investments have happened in 2015 as opposed to 2014, and it's growing. I mean, it seems like the new hot thing to invest in is startups as opposed to stock options. So there's a lot of money out there to invest in startups. I do think we're seeing a lot of good technology. You kind of need to filter from everything that's out there, but I think that kind of happens. That's the natural process of evolution that's happening in any case. I don't really view the situation as a bubble. I mean, I think that right now there's lots of good technology, lots of good startups I'm seeing all over the world, not just Tel Aviv, but wherever I'm traveling, and I hope we can continue. There's a really good vibe right now, I feel, in the tech scene.
Yeah. Bob, you've had an interesting career. Are you seeing this bubble? Are you excited by it? Are you scared by it? Are you?
They're always cycles. I've been around the block enough to see them come and go. I remember raising money in March and May of 2000, and again in 2004 and 2000. It goes like that. But I will say something interesting. You always have to plan. Every startup person has to think in the following way. It could be cut off someday. You don't know what's around the corner. You don't know what's around the block. So save cash. Don't go for the fancy offices. It's not worth it. You think you need it to attract talent? You don't. Cool work environment, cool product, that's what attracts talent. I don't think the fancy offices are the major thing. So obviously, you have to take that into account, save cash as best you can, and just move forward and spend less. That's my feeling at this point. And I've been in all these environments, obviously.
Yeah, let's talk to. You have sort of a fancy office there. Do you want to defend a little bit of a nice office?
I can defend that. Yeah, actually, I totally agree with Bob. I totally agree with Bob, and that's actually how it works for us with the distributed team. So, San Francisco, as you mentioned earlier, it makes everything much easier when it comes to business development and growth. All the people you want to talk to are there, at least for our company. The clients, the partners, the investors, everything is there. So you need to form the personal relationship to go sell, to go make partnerships. That's why we have the office there. However, in Athens, since we have access to this unutilized pool of top talent that is here, and they can't go to the US because they don't have the visas and all this kind of stuff. They're stuck in Greece, so we're taking them. We create jobs for them, and the money that they get, the salaries are still a fraction of the price of the top engineers, of the equivalent engineers in San Francisco or Silicon Valley, but still they're top of the game. They're the best you can get in Greece, and that actually works great for us. And you know, this fancy office that you can see here, it's the cost of maybe 2 or 3 desks, individual desks in San Francisco's co-working spaces. So it's crazy. The cost here is basically great for return on investment. So just 2-3 weeks ago, we got a $2 million investment, which is equivalent maybe to 5 or 6 or 7 if you're based in San Francisco, because we're not paying 150 or 200K per engineer as most startups do in San Francisco, and we're kind of saving money, as Bob said, by getting top engineers as well, but for a fraction of the money. So that actually worked great for us, and extending the runway in as many ways as you can is a key.
Can you talk to the economic troubles that Greece has had, and does that affect you as a startup entrepreneur at all, or is that something in the newspapers? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna lie, things are a bit, complicated here in Greece. However, I mean, I see people. So I was away and I just came today. So I see people outside drinking coffee, going to bars, restaurants. So I can't really see that happening now. And Greece is. These problems are like a startup environment. It's like, so failure or success is based on a team level, and if Greece is united, like I think we can actually pass that. And from the company perspective, all the money is in the US, so we're not affected at all by the crisis, and still we're helping it because we're creating jobs for high-paying jobs for Greece levels, and actually it works great for us. So there's nothing to do with basically with our business and our KPIs or anything.
Yeah, Ayelet, back to you to end up this segment. What's your advice to startups like this to help them get to the next level and become the Waze or the Uber? How do you sit down with startups like this and think through their strategy or think through how they approach the market?
So, as I mentioned before, last week I was actually in Barcelona and Bob was there as well, and I did a panel which was called "How to Pitch Me." We actually have on our website a whole different posts from different reporters, and actually you were the first one, of course, on how to, telling entrepreneurs how to pitch them and giving tips and tricks. And I think that the way to rise above the noise, and Josh Constein actually said it very well on stage. He said, tell me what problem you're solving in the market. Tell me who your competitors are, and tell me why what you're doing is better than what they're doing. And I think that every startup needs to think about those 3 things when it goes to market. Basically, what are they trying to solve? Are they really bringing something that's new and different than what's out there already? Because there are so many, Me Too's out there. And I think that every startup really needs to think, what is it doing that's different than other startups out there? who are their competitors and why is what they're doing better than their competitors? And if they can answer those three questions and address them in an effective manner, then they have something going.
Yeah.
So
I'm always listening to what pain do you solve for me, and that makes it tough to judge some of the startups. Like, I don't really do a lot of mobile advertising, but I know somebody has that pain. You know, at Rackspace we buy a lot of advertising, so I know somebody cares about it. Yeah, thanks to the three of you for being on the show, and thanks to Cisco to bringing me video conferencing system to have this international conversation. It shows the power of video conferencing, internet-based video conferencing, because you don't have the Cisco equipment in your offices. You're just calling in here, and it's really cool. So thanks
Great
for
software.
thanks. Well, it's hardware on my side, but software on your side. It's thanks for having us on. Thanks also to Ustream for streaming this out for us. Thanks to Rackspace, obviously, who paid me to go around the world and study all the best startups in the world. We provide business infrastructure for 300,000 companies around the world. Thanks to NewTek, who's doing the video switching behind the screen, so they're providing a lot of video support. And thanks to Syringa, and of course, Scotty Vest, who makes my clothes. I love putting my iPhones. These pants are awesome because you can put an iPhone 6 Plus and a passport in your pants, and you can't. I do so much traveling that it's theft resistant, at least, you know. So.
And thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
thanks
Kurt, for doing this.
Robert.
For being.
It's